Hey guys, welcome back to Remove Before Race, and I'm really excited today because we're finally getting our hands on the facelifted C43. Again, we've got the coupe as we had in the pre-facelift review, and recently, of course, we went to the Frankfurt Motor Show. We did a tiny walk around of this car and then did the big full-on review of the facelift C63S coupe. So it's about time that we saw what this C43 has brought to the table after the facelift, because from what I surmised at the Frankfurt show, this seems to have been the car that's benefited the most from the facelift. But before we go into the design changes and the performance upgrades, let's remind ourselves of exactly where the C43 sits in the AMG family. Now, it's had a few years to kind of find its place in the market. People have a better idea of what the C43 is, but I still want to make it crystal clear. The cardinal sin with the C43 is assuming that it is a C63 Lite. It is absolutely not that, and that's because it's a 4MATIC car. It's all-wheel drive, whereas of course the C63 is a rear-wheel drive tire shredding monster. This has got a completely different drive, and I want you to think of it, as I said in the last review, more like a smaller version of an E63 or much more similar to the A45. It's part of that 4MATIC bracket of AMG cars. Now, of course, now we've got the new 53 series coming into the AMGs as well. There's entry levels for the E-Class, for the CLS, even for the AMG GT 4-door, there's a GT 53. And that follows a similar kind of formula of having a 6-pot engine with a turbo linked to the 4MATIC. So these are all now entry-level AMGs. But now let's attend to this facelift, and we're going to start with the design. Previously, when I reviewed the last car, it was pretty much indistinguishable from your standard fare C-Class. So if we have a look at what that looked like, and then we have a look at what just a normal C-Class at the time looked like, you can see that it's basically just a few tiny badges. You can barely see the character of the C43, especially from this particular angle. But now if we switch back to the new car, you can see the much more aggressive front end. And that's really aided by this grille here, which you will recognize from the previous C63, or indeed the entire 63 family going backwards used to have this twin blade double louvre grille here. Now it's been slightly redesigned for the 43 series. It's finished in Magna Iridium Silver, but now the 43s and the 53s and the 35 cars can inherit this grille, and it gives them a unique character from this angle. But it doesn't end there on the front end. You've also got unique aero pieces at the bottom, just in front of the aerodynamic air curtains, which improve the airflow in the front, and there are unique trims finished in satin chrome along the rest of the front end. So what you end up with is a very unique look on the front, and if you see this coming up behind you, you know that it is part of that entry-level AMG family, which is great. Now, when you come along the side, I did mention before that I always felt that the C43 harkened a little bit back to the old W204 series, where it looks a bit like the old C63. And that's compounded further when you have these satin black AMG multi-spokes, which really look like the wheels you've got in the old C63. These look really good on here. It's a shame, though, that we don't get the new 5 spokes off the 53 series, which you also get in Germany on the C43. Unfortunately, not an option in the UK. They look really good, and again, if you're an AMG fan or just a petrol head in general, you will know that those wheels belong to that family. So a bit of a shame that we don't have that. But the rear is where things get really, really cool. You'll immediately notice the rear diffuser, which is a lot more similar to the brand new C63S facelift. But it's those round oval pipes that seal the deal. Gone are the lazy diesel-style pipes with a little slat in them from the previous car. They are gorgeous. They're really big. They've got a lovely stainless steel finish. They really harken back, for me, to the oval pipes that we had on the previous C63. A nice little nod to those when you look at them. But the best bit for 43 owners is you're going to see these pipes on a lot of flagship AMGs going into the future in the next few years. Cars like the new A45S, the GT53 4-door, and maybe even the normal AMG GT might see these at some point. Let's see if I'm right. But the point of that is you're getting a lot of connection to flagship AMGs, which is a great bonus for 43 owners. The only bit where the C43 gets let down a bit is having skinny rear tyres and not quite the right stance of the wheels pushing out to the edges as you would on a full-blown AMG. But these are things that can be fixed in the next car, I think. So now every side of the car has a unique look, so you will immediately recognize it as a 43, which is great. And the reason I said that the 43 has benefited the most from the facelift is when the C63 was being updated, a lot of us AMG fans were hoping that the saloon and the wagon would get extended arches like the coupe and cab have. So if we compare this, for example, to the facelift C63 coupe, you can see that it's got extended arches on the front and the rear. And when you see the cars in person, it makes a massive difference to the look. They don't look similar. And it really makes this car look a notch below. But if you get either the saloon or the wagon, which for me are the pick of the bunch of the 43 series, you compare them to the C63, you can see that it's only a matter of design changes. The body is essentially the same. Yes, the front is a little bit wider, but you can't really tell that much of a difference. And the effect that has then is that the 43 has got all of these changes in basically the same width of body. And it becomes just a matter of taste. Which one do you like more? Do you like the Panamericana grille, or do you like the old twin bar? Do you like the round pipes at the back or the square ones? And you almost have an argument then to say that the C43 could look as good, if not better, in your own opinion. And then this benefit of the facelift translates inside for the C43 in a very similar way. So jumping into the C43, it's a really exciting place to be compared to the previous car. And immediately it's that driver zone that hits you. Whereas in the previous car, you had not even an AMG steering wheel, at least in the UK versions. You had just the normal standard fare C-Class steering wheel. Now in this car, you get the all new AMG steering wheel out of the S63, the new C63S, the GT 4-door, and it looks really, really good. It's got that great steampunk design that we love from those cars. The red marker at the 12 o'clock on the steering wheel is really cool as well. If you're in Europe, you can also get the Dynamica steering wheel. That's not an option here in the UK, but you can get that retrimmed at places like Rock Studio. And of course, your eyes are drawn then to all the touch buttons here, which we've explored. Not as complicated when you actually get to using them. You'll notice then immediately when you go to start the car, it's got the new startup pulsing button here, which looks absolutely glorious. So let's give that a push. And then you see the lovely welcome screen in front of you, which has been so nicely animated. It's a shame though that they didn't put the C43's face in that animation, bit of a weird choice. But as it fires up, suddenly this looks very familiar. If you've seen my C63S facelift review, you've got the Super Sport display out of the top of the line AMGs in this. What a bonus for C43 owners. You'll see this same new design inside the C63, the AMG GT 4-door, and if the GT ever gets a digital screen, I'm sure it will end up being this design as well. But what a bonus. I mean, you might be a bit unhappy if you own one of the higher end cars, but this is amazing for a 43 owner to get that in your car. Now, I want to spend a bit of time on this digital dash in front of us, because when we first saw it in the C63S facelift review, I was quite rushed because of course it's a press drive, you have limited time with the car. But now I want to show you some of the details that I've been noticing as I've lived with this one. And there's just some really, really nice fine details, which is why I think I appreciate the way AMG have done this more than most other digital clusters I've seen. So I'm going to zoom you into some of these details now. If you even just look at the blue pattern that surrounds the bottom part of the Supersport display, you've got these tiny hexagonal details that give it a certain texture, which just, it's such a nice little detail on a very high resolution display that gives it an almost real feeling. You can see the shadows that drop from the numbers on the rev counter. The actual little dials on the rev counter are like long planes of glass that flow down, almost like a speed tunnel look, I suppose. It's just those little details that are really impressive. The rev needle glows as well, and that glow goes on to whatever it's passing. It's a really clever thing because it almost tricks you into thinking that it's an analog piece of kit, but it's not. Now I much prefer this setup where you've got a screen within what looks like a traditional driving unit and another screen on this side, compared to just having a long screen like you have in the G63, the E63, GT4 door. I really wish this was in the GT4 door. I get why it's not, because it wouldn't look as premium than as a CLS or an E63 to most people. But the other reason I really like this one is because unlike that display or the displays in the E-Class, which are a gloss finish on the pane of glass, this is a matte finish. And because of that, it looks less like a screen. And then those little details that I was showing you compound even more. And it just makes it look just better. Less gloss, less screen-like, less of a consumer device, and more of something that I'm expecting to see in a car. I really hope that that matte finish comes onto the other screens. I know it probably won't, but to me, it just looks so much better. The animations used are also really cool, but they're useful in performance driving as well. So I will show you those when we're on the run and doing our performance review later. So you've got the new steering wheel, you've got the digital display. This alone is such a big upgrade for both the C43 and the C63, to be honest, because yes, you've got the Super Sport display, but we can flick over now to the design side and you can move into Sport, which then has the 2 dials, and you can customize. We'll come back to customization. And then you've also got, of course, Classic, which is what you find in your standard C-Class. But in all of these designs, you can customize what information you have on the left or the right of the rev counter, say in Super Sport, or if you go into Sport, you can actually change the dials on the left and the right completely to whatever information that you want to show. Now, of course, you also get the wider command screen on this side, which is actually, it's a wider screen, slightly shorter, and it fits a bit better in the interior. So the UI in here is pretty much what you find in the E63, a little bit of what you see in the A-Class as well. So it's a much advanced system compared to what was in the C-Classes previously. You can get AMG track pace, at least certainly in Europe you can. So if you remember from the C63S review, that's recording lap time 0 to 60 on all the famous tracks in the world. But one of the best things that we get as C-Class owners is finally getting more than 3 ambient light options. Now we've got the full 64 options from the E-Class. I'm going to show you some of them now, because finally we can have some nice red lighting inside the car. You've got a bit of hell green going on. Finally, we've actually got a lovely choice that was sorely lacking before, especially since how advanced the new A-Class is. This has caught up a little bit. It's not quite there. The A-Class is still, in my opinion, a lot more advanced as far as the technology aspect goes. Of course, this car has got the glass carbon fiber, which looks really good. It actually suits the aluminium that you get on the doors, whereas when you get black carbon fiber, that remains as aluminium. So this almost suits the whole thing a bit better. It's not something I would expect, but seeing it in person, I actually think it works better. But now I want to show you what this car looks like from the front if we compare it to the previous car, just to show you the big difference that you have as the driver, just purely the look of the car as soon as you get in. It's a big step up. Now this car is fitted with the Amg Performance Seats. If I was speccing one, I'd always get them because they're the same seats as what you get in the C63 and the other top of the range AMGs, so it brings the whole car a bit closer design wise to those. And for me, they're really comfortable. As I've said numerous times before, they're good for long journeys, and when you're driving fast, they hug you really well. They're probably the best seats that AMG have ever made. There are other colour options in the C43. You're not just stuck to the black Artico with black Dynamica and the red stitching. You can get other bits, but well, you are limited if you want the performance seats to this particular interior, unfortunately. So another update in this car is you now get a wireless charging mat in here. So if your phone has wireless charging, you just throw it in there and it begins charging immediately, which is a nice little convenience feature for us to have. This car's also got heads-up display and it's got 360-degree camera. You can get driving assistance back and all the rest of it as well. It's a shame that it's not at the same level as the new A-Class. No Mercedes is at the moment. But it does look like it can be possible. I can't see why this can't be a touchscreen, why we can't have the voice commands from MBUX in this. Perhaps it'll come further in the life of the 205. I'm not sure, it'd be nice to see certainly. So in the last review I talked about the individual configuration on Dynamic Select and how it was too much like a normal Mercedes. You had aircon configurable in an AMG, you couldn't put the exhaust button as a configured option in your individual. It was a lot more like the diesels and the normal petrols. But now, when you go into individual config, it's almost identical to the 63 version. You've got exhaust system and you've got all the other options that you would normally see inside the AMG. And I absolutely love how exhaust is either balanced or powerful. I'm sure that's some kind of Jeremy Clarkson nod in there. But now, as always, it is time to turn the car on and to see, does it sound like an AMG on startup? I'm going to start with comfort with the flaps closed, so let's see what that sounds like. Pretty standard kind of petrol startup on that. And now let's jump into Sport Plus, so that's with the powerful exhaust settings. I think we should give it some beans as well, so let's see what comfort is like with the flaps closed first. Sounds pretty boring. I absolutely love the glow on the rev counter. Look at that, look how cool that looks. But no, that sounds no good. Let's pop the car back into Sport Plus. Of course, this car has the AMG Performance Exhaust. As I always say, make sure you order that. I think it's standard on the coupé, but the other cars it might not be. Just look through the options list. If you see an exhaust option, tick it because it changes everything. But now, let's head off, see what this car performs like, the extra power we can talk about, and of course the all-important sound. So we're going to start off in comfort with the exhaust flaps open, which is the most typical mode to drive in. And guys, currently I'm actually wearing a new line of clothing by AMG called AMG Performance Wear, and I'm very proud to say that I am now an ambassador for APW. So very soon I'll be doing a dedicated video to their entire line of performance wear, so look for that on the channel soon. So the engine in the C43 is the same 3-litre V6 bi-turbo, and it follows that trend of having a smaller displacement engine linked to a 4MATIC system in these entry-level AMGs. You're going to see the same in the 53s, you'll probably see the same in the A35 as well. But unlike the C63S facelift, which didn't even get 1 horse more worth of power, this car has almost got 30 HP more, and it brings the car up to 390 brake horsepower now, which is basically the same number as we've got in the current A45. So it's quite a powerful entry-level AMG now. Now if we shift into Sport Plus, feel a bit of that power. The power increase is not an ECU update, it actually comes via larger turbos inside the engine now. The turbos also have an increased pressure of 1.1 bar. And I think you really do feel more of that power at 2000 revs. 0 to 60 is meant to be 4.7 seconds unchanged. I don't know though, it feels, they've got to be lying, it feels a lot quicker to me. Well, you remember how quick this shot off the line in Remove Before Race episode 1 against the 2 C63s, left them standing in those wet conditions. So I don't know, this feels a bit quicker, but I do wonder whether that's the tinkering with the gearing that AMG have done here. The gearbox is still the same 9-speed that was in the facelift, but now when the gears change, thanks to the little updates they've made, they change a lot faster, so it gives you this feeling of going a bit more rapidly along. Now, as I'm living with this car and driving it, I'm noticing that the Mercedes-Benz side of it that was in the pre-facelift is being pushed out and replaced with more familiar AMG things. And one bit is when you look at the driving modes, before you had Eco, Comfort, Sport and Sport Plus, which was very reminiscent of, say, a C180. But now you've got different driving modes. In fact, they're the ones that you'll find inside the new C63S, all bar race mode. So we've got Sport Plus, Sport, Comfort, Individual of course, and a new one, Slippery, denoted by a snowflake, and of course gives you moderate power delivery in snowy conditions, something that you might actually fathom doing in a C43 compared to its 63 big rear-wheel drive cousin. But now enough about that, let us actually deal with the sound. I'm going to start off back in, actually no, let's go all the way to Sport Plus, because that's what's going to prove whether this still sounds as good as it used to. So I'll stick it into manual as well. Love the F1 inspired red flashing lights coming in the Digi-Speedo. That just looks brilliant. Although I have noticed when you're using manual, you better be quick on the gear changes, because otherwise it's going to hold the revs and the car would jolt and it doesn't feel that good. Actually sounds pretty similar to the previous one. You're getting some nice pops and bangs coming from the rear. Oh, nice. Right there, that's the sweet spot. Yeah, the overruns are lovely. I don't know whether it's, maybe we have to remind ourselves, we have to look at our previous review of the C43, but to my ears it sounds at least as pleasing. I don't know whether the volume's as much. Yeah, it sounds very, very similar. And gosh, the suspension in Sport Plus is a lot less rocky than it was before. If I throw it back into Comfort then with the exhaust on, you still get a nice rumble when the flaps are open. I do like the sound of this V6 engine. It's not like a fart box like you find a bit in the new RS4 that we tested. I guess even the M3, M4 do that. This sounds less farty to my ears, a bit more of a natural V6 howl, which is nice. And then when you turn the exhaust off and you just glide along as you would in a normal Mercedes-Benz, and it's perfectly sensible, which is, I think, a pull for a C43 owner, because it's not all about performance. If it was all about performance at this price range, you would not be considering this particular car. But this is for the person who wants the duality of a good daily Mercedes-Benz with something with a bit more power, but perhaps a bit more affordable and not as leery. But enough of that, let's get back into Sport Plus, because that is the pick of the bunch for performance. Now let's attend to the handling. I'm going to start with the steering, I think. It's an electronic setup. Now you don't have the option of steering within the individual setup, and I'll get onto that later. Now it's just clever, so when you're doing low speeds, it's very easy to turn the steering wheel. As you begin to pick up performance, it hardens, which is just like what you'd find in a C63. So it's certainly better than it was, I think. It's a lot more clever. But the feedback isn't amazing. It's not really going to be a benchmark for handling. It's not as communicative as I would be used to in any other car with this steering wheel, so it's a bit of a bizarre experience. That being said, as I said, it's better than the previous car. So okay, I'm weighing this up against the 63 AMG, which is probably unfair. Compared to the previous car, the steering is better. But one thing which is really good, it seems to handle speed better in cornering now. And I suspect that's because of the new components and AMG specific elastic kinematics and kinematics that they've modified within this car to help it with that specific job of handling speed in corners better. So of course this is a 4MATIC system, it's all-wheel drive, so you're expecting driving a bit like the A45. It's of course rear biased, it's 31 to the front, 69 to the rear, so for all intents and purposes it does feel nice and rear wheel biased most of the time, but that can shift as and when the car needs more grip. It gives you a lot of confidence because of that. You know it's all weather because of that, and you just get supreme amounts of grip. But I do think maybe because of that, the driving experience is a bit monotonous. It's a bit the same every time, which I'd kind of liken to the A45 a bit as well. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. It is fun, so you're replicating the fun each time. It's just not as exciting as what you'd find in the higher end, which I guess is the point, right? You want this to be entry level. It's not going to give you the same thrills as the 63 would. So we've got easy to master, replicatable fun as far as the handling goes, thanks to the 4MATIC and the way it's set up. So this is going to be really good for someone who's looking for something as a midpoint compared to the C63, which is now becoming quite track focused. It's funny, if you jump straight out of this and go into a C63, then you will feel the weight of the C43, which is funny because the 63 is bigger and bulkier, especially thanks to the V8 engine, but it's the incredible chassis of that car alongside the active engine mounts as well that shift the weight in a way that it feels so much lighter. But now let's address the daily driving factor a little bit. So I'm back in comfort, and one thing I complained about in the previous review is I found the pre-facelift C43 just a little bit too harsh. It was too harsh to drive regularly on roads that were anything but perfect. And as with the C63S facelift, I'm finding this a lot smoother in every single road. It just seems to deal with the bumps a little bit better. I can't find anything, technically speaking, that points towards that. But having done thousands of miles in a C43, I can attest to the fact that this is just a lot more comfortable. And that seems to play really well when then you jump into the car. You can change the front screen to something a bit more Mercedes-Benz, like the classic screen. You can turn the exhaust off and you can just cruise along in great comfort thanks to the suspension, thanks to the way that the 9-speed just flicks through the gears in comfort mode as well. And it comes back to ticking that duality box that is so important in every single AMG. But then all you need to do is my favorite bit, you just flick it back into Sport Plus and you have so much fun immediately from just the flick of the switch. It's brilliant. It's exactly what I expect in an AMG. I want that duality. I want nice sound, I want fast acceleration. It's just fun. Yeah. In terms of shifting, if we put the car into manual, I really like the F1 inspired dials. The downshifts seem okay, but it has been sluggish at times. It's not quite as sharp as you'd find in the C63. My favourite method of driving quickly in this car is to put it in Sport Plus, leave it in automatic, but then use the paddles so it doesn't hold the revs at the point where you might shift a little too slow and will shift for you just in case. Then you don't get that horrible judder, but the car still shifts quickly. That's the sweet spot, I think. To conclude, it's a shame that there's still so much snobbery, especially when you look at the comment section on social media, about the 43 series, the 53 series. No doubt the 35 will be attacked in the same way. And what you often get is, well, first of all, it's not one-man engine, they're robot-built. And that's absolutely true, that's right. They are robot-built engines, but they have been modified by AMG. The second thing you get is, well, it's just a Mercedes-Benz with an AMG badge slapped on it. And that is just absolutely wrong. As we've been through in this review, there's not a single part of this car that hasn't been changed or modified by AMG. It's got AMG-derived suspension, steering, the gearbox, the drive modes, the engine software. It's all by AMG. Yes, in the next C43, I would like to see an engine that's been built by AMG, even if it's robot-built, but one that's been built from the ground up by them. For no other reason than I just think they make fantastic engines that feel like natural engines. So why not bring that treatment to the whole 43-53 series? Then people will accuse it of being slow and sluggish. But in the real world, it's just not. It's got all-weather capability for an entry-level AMG, similar to the A45. Not quite as dynamic, but loads of fun to be had. And if you call it slow, you'll do it as your own peril, as we proved in episode 1. Auto Mags will tell you to go and buy an M2 competition instead. And that is a fair point considering pure driving pleasure. But it completely misses the point of having an entry-level AMG that can still function as a luxurious Mercedes-Benz with all the tech that you could possibly want and this wonderful upgraded interior. But when I take a step back and I take in the essence of this car, one thing sticks out to me in stark contrast to the pre-facelift, and that is that AMG seem to want to plaster their sign and their heritage all over this car, in stark contrast to the previous car, which was almost unidentifiable as an AMG, both inside and out. Outside, the car shares cues with AMGs past and AMGs present, and inside, unlike the previous car where you would have needed to be told what you were sitting in by someone like me, now the car proudly wears the new AMG steering wheel, and it's got the driver zone from six-figure supercars coming in AMG's future. They did not want to leave any doubt in your mind that this came from a Falterbach. This is them taking pride in a product that's now really well known in the marketplace. And I think for me, this does the whole duality thing better than the previous car did. The previous car was not very good at being a Mercedes-Benz in the way that it drove. Although it looked completely like a Mercedes-Benz, it didn't feel that way. This one now has tech as good as the E-Class in terms of the digital display and the new command system. And as for the AMG side, it follows that AMG formatting tradition of having great grip, tasty sounds. You've got a good gearbox, and the design outside shouts that it is indeed an AMG. So for anyone considering upgrading their C43, there is so many reasons to do it. And for anyone entering the AMG family, this is a really great place to start. I just love the fact that whereas previously you could have jumped in here and confused the car for a C180, now you will jump in it and confuse it for a C63. And that's what I'm expecting of an entry-level C-AMG. I think the kind of person who's going to get this car is someone like our friend T1 DSO on Instagram. He's got a GTC Edition 50 Coupe as his daily car, but he wants the C43 Saloon, the pick of the bunch, that or the wagon, as his daily car to chew up miles in relative comfort, but give him some of that AMG flavor when he's really looking for it. And this is now going to give that ilk of customer bang for their buck, because you're getting an experience that much more premium compared to what you had before. In the lead up to this, I asked on Instagram, what do you want to hear about? And one of the most common questions was, what is this car like compared to the E53 Coupe? Which I think is a really brilliant question. And it's a question that we're going to answer next on Remove Before Race as we take on the E53 Coupe. It'll be the first time that I've driven a 53 engine as well. So it'll be really interesting to see whether that car now warrants the extra money compared to this, given how good this has become now. So guys, thank you so much for watching this review on the AMG C43 facelift. I hope it was useful in terms of explaining what they've improved in this car. I'm really keen to see what they're doing in the next entry-level AMG, which is the A35, which will be coming soon. But thank you as always for watching. Please do like, subscribe and share as you always do. I'm going to do my usual and enjoy the last moments with this C43.